A lot of people think that India's ascent to a Viksit Bharat is a given, that we are destined to become a developed nation and an economic superpower. Not so fast. For example, when PM Modi had announced his intention to run for his third term as Prime Minister, speaking at the inauguration of the Bharat Mandapam in Delhi at the time, he had combined his announcement with the promise that in his third term, India would become the third largest economy in the world. At that time, some from the Congress had scoffed at his claim, but they weren't doubting India becoming a top 3 GDP. What they were criticizing was Modi's role in doing so. Some like Chidambaram claimed that India would become a top 3 economy anyway, with or without Modi. In response to this, PM Modi had over the next few weeks gone to town on this claim, hitting back at the Congress and talking about how when the UPA government had steered India to become one of the so-called Fragile Five economies and outside the global top 10 at the end of its 10 years. At that time, India becoming one of the top 3 economies in the world was nowhere in the picture. Modi and BJP sure takes claim that India got a third place. Even firm believers in Bharat, albeit for good and positive reasons, make this mistake of presuming that our ascent into a developed nation is guaranteed. But the truth really is that we are in a race against time. And that's why the Viksit Bharat mission has a clear time-bound goal. It is to make India a developed country by 2047. Not eventually, but by 2047, which will also be 100 years since our independence. And the truth, India will not be a developed nation by then. This 2047 figure is only partly ornamental. Given that we are in 2026, it gives us 21 years to get there. And what we are fighting against is something all developing nations fear, the dreaded middle income trap. But what is this middle income trap? And why does the Washington Examiner and its paywall columnist James Rogan think that India will escape it? Let's look at all of this and more on this episode of his analysis with me. The middle income trap basically means that due to various factors, a developing economy fails to make the transition from a middle-income economy to a high-income economy. India is currently a lower middle-income economy, with a per capita income of about $3,500, according to various estimates. To become a middle-income economy, as per the World Bank, we have to be in a range of $4,500 to about $14,000. And above $14,000 per year, we begin to enter the high-income economy ballpark. China is just on the threshold of achieving high income. As per some classifications, it is there already, whereas as per the Chinese government, the goal is to become a moderately high-income economy by 2035. India, on the other hand, has to grow its per capita income about five-fold to achieve high income. So, what's the middle income trap here? The middle income trap essentially occurs when during the course of a country's economic development, underlying factor that's driving that economic development peters out. For example, take some former Asian tiger economies. South Korea, Taiwan, and Singapore have transitioned into high-income economies, while Malaysia and Thailand have got middle income trapped. In South Korea and Taiwan's case, their innovation-led growth has made them strategic pillars of some of the most important and lucrative high-tech industries, while Singapore has transitioned into a financial and export-import hub. But Malaysia and Thailand have remained locked in mid-tier manufacturing without much innovation to corner off key markets and build a proverbial moat around them. That is not something they can now fix very easily. They have missed the bus. Take bigger countries, 2 from India's peers in the BRICS. Brazil is firmly entrenched in the middle income trap because of its over-reliance on commodities and poor productivity growth. South Africa, meanwhile, has had political instability, poor infrastructure, and at times a lawless society. Another pair of examples. Turkey has suffered financial mismanagement and an over-reliance on non-productive sectors like real estate, while Mexico has grown into middle income due to its proximity to the U.S., but has remained in America's thrall instead of boosting its own productivity and innovation via education and R&D. In fact, these are all countries that as of this moment have higher per capita incomes than India. But look at their growth rates. Brazil is 2.5%. Mexico is 0.6%. South Africa is 1.3% as per the IMF. In comparison, India is at 7.3%. These countries have lost their chance. The circumstances that led to them becoming middle-income economies can no longer sustain that growth. So what is the fear for India? The fear is that our biggest advantage, the fact that we are the world's populous country with a young population, our demographic dividend runs out before we make the transition to high income. If that happens, then we will have an aging society with too many pensioners and non-productive elderly people and not enough productive youngsters to bear that burden and continue to grow our economy. So that is the middle income trap worry in India's case. Now, coming to this new Washington Examiner report, what does it say? According to the report, we have achieved 7% annual average economic growth since 2003, and if we maintain that for the next 20 years, we will become a high-income economy. It lists our demographic advantage, infrastructure growth, supply chain shifts from China, foreign investment, digitization, and entrepreneurial culture. Among the challenges, it mentions bureaucracy, corruption, and politics, but praises reforms in taxation, education, and governance. To conclude, it reiterates that strong capital investment, labor supply growth, and technology adoption are key. If you ask me, however, while I like the sound of everything he said, I don't think it's going to be that easy. 7% average annual growth is not enough for India. Over the long term, it risks leaving us just short of high income status. At 7% growth, per capita income may reach around $13,000 by 2047, just below high income. At 7.8%, it could reach around $15,500. The danger lies in aiming too low. So how should we read this report? It's positive, but we should be cautious. It makes things sound simpler than they really are. What's more important is recognizing that Viksit Bharat 2047 will require sustained effort. But what do you think? Realistically, how do you see this 7% growth target for India? Per capita of 14,000 in current purchasing power, because that range is also shifting.